Talking about Mercury retrograde. A few practices for you to do. Mercury is about speech, ideas, how you use your speech. Very important to understand that story in your head. It's Sam, and I'm talking today about some remedies and ideas for Mercury retrograde in general, and just ways to approach what happens when Mercury goes retrograde, and in fact when other planets go retrograde as well. So Mercury is connected to the function of speech. At least this is how we often encounter Mercury, is how well we speak, what we speak about, whether or not our speech conveys accuracy and truth, or whether it's used to coerce and manipulate and used as a means to an end. One of the reasons why Mercury is considered to be neutral is because of this quality. When Mercury is powerful, then our power of speech clarifies and we're focused on accuracy and precision and getting it right. When Mercury is weak, and when it's, or let's say that it's strong but influenced negatively, for example, then those negative qualities become enhanced by Mercury's skill and ability to use language to manipulate and coerce rather than to clarify. So for example, and again, all forms of communication are related to Mercury. Certainly speech and the words that come out of your mouth is one of them, but we also communicate, again, through subtle, in subtle ways, even, obviously things like through media and, writing. These are all different forms of communication and of conveying things. So, you want to understand that the power of Mercury and when it's operating with power and clarity and brilliance and in a dharmic sense, again, we're interested in the truth when we have a discussion, which means we listen to the other person's perspective, and we're interested in knowing what the other person says so that we can perhaps adjust what we think. And we're open to that process. We're not just using words to coerce and to try to win the argument. Again, Mercury in the planetary order comes in between Mars and Jupiter. Again, Mars is interested in winning, and Jupiter is also interested in maintaining our beliefs. I believe this thing, so I'm just going to look for evidence to support what I already believe. And then with Mars, then I'm going to defend that evidence. My opinions are going to defend my beliefs. This is Mars is opinions defending beliefs, which is Jupiter. This is why Mars and Jupiter have a good relationship. All things considered, they're good because one supports the other. Jupiter finds the belief, Mars defends it, but the defense is often in the form of opinions. But between those two is Mercury, who says, maybe my opinions need some adjustment. So I'm going to be curious for new information, not just cherry pick information that helps me win the argument and then say that as if that's the point, but actually want to understand and comprehend what's true and what's correct. Again, that's Mercury. It might be a very inconvenient truth that we have to acknowledge and even admit, I made a mistake with that. But when Mercury's powerful, this is what we do. We're actually interested in the truth, and if we make a mistake, we'll say, oh, that was a mistake. And we're not fixed in our beliefs and our opinions. It's not opinions defending beliefs, it's, I'm not really sure. Oh, I'm not sure what's going on. I'm going to curiously try to find the answer, right? And so, again, when it's weak, we will just cherry pick some information, cherry pick like something, and then twist it around our beliefs, and then form an opinion about the cherry picked piece of data, and then defend that opinion as if our life depends on it, as if that's truth. Again, you can totally see the difference. This is what fanaticism is about. People who have fanatical opinions and fanatical views, The fanaticism comes from the Jupiter. I believe this is true. And then then Mercury looks for details to confirm the belief, and then Mars defends it. These fanatical opinions, polarized, black and white, it's all or nothing, this or that, right? This is very Mars-Jupiter, whereas Mercury's in the middle going, wait a second, is that really true? And you'll see when people have these fanatical beliefs, they not only state things that are incorrect, but they also omit things that would undermine their argument, that would undermine their fanatical view. And again, everything that's against, what makes Mercury, what really degrades Mercury is an argument. When there's an argument and an opinion, this is really anathema to Mercury. You want to have discrimination about this, because opinions are related to Mars, because opinions are black and white and polarized. And it's okay to have opinions. I have opinions about things, for sure, right? It's right to do this, not right to do that. But those opinions should compel us to take action, which is what Mars is related to. But when we just use opinions to try to win intellectual arguments, intellectual battles, then Mars is not in his territory anymore. Then Mars is interfering with Mercury's territory, for example. So these three planets are very crucial in helping us to develop. And so rather than omit important parts of a discussion that would undermine our argument, we act as though that doesn't even exist and this is the only thing that's real. And you'll see a kind of propaganda start to happen. So there's a lot of that in the world now, right? A lot of propaganda, a lot of, cherry picking information, selective, use of selective information, and then acting as though, and then kind of spinning that. So again, when Mercury goes when Mercury goes retrograde, it's a good time to reflect on these things, reflect on that intellectual process, that intellectual manipulation to some extent, and using language to try to get what we want rather than speak the truth. And again, it can happen also in a very coercive way. One of the biggest ways that we recognize that sort of detrimental Mercury is dishonesty, and literally also just flat out lying and not telling the truth. And it's not always obvious. Even when people try to obfuscate the truth and just, sort of try to win an argument by omitting things that undermine their argument, they might not think to themselves, oh yeah, I'm lying, but it's definitely a lie. It's being dishonest, right? And again, part of the word of honest is honor, which is honoring, oh yeah, I made this mistake, or this isn't correct, and making that adjustment, which is all the Mercury power. So I started by saying this is going to have some remedies and ways to deal with Mercury energy when it's retrograde or when it's weak. One of the things, the first thing that happens when a planet is retrograde is it backs up in our mind and consciousness, and we want to look at the internal reflective quality of Mercury, which has to do with listening. It's not just speaking, listening. Listen to what's coming back. Notice what, in many ways, everyone around you might be saying, about you in some objective way, or about a certain situation. And even listen to the things I just said, because maybe you're not aware of this process. We all do it. We all want to be right. We all have beliefs. And notice how much we won't acknowledge inconvenient truths, right? And how much where it's hard for you to give credit to something or someone that undermines maybe a belief that you have. And again, we all have these sort of buttons, like with politics and other kinds of hard opinions and views that we have. Notice how you're sort of loath to give credit where credit is due in certain ways. And again, this is where we get stuck in that battle of Mars and Jupiter and lose that flexibility of Mercury. So the first thing is really listening. Of course, everything revolves around our spiritual practices and our meditations and things like that. And that develops that quality of listening, that faculty of listening, and bringing that power of listening and Mercury and flexibility and creativity and curiosity and intelligence ultimately into the heart. So we need to bring that and anchor that in the heart. And this is why even astrologically the sign of Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, comes after Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, where Gemini goes out seeking information because it's the masculine quality of Mercury. Gemini is interested in new ideas and kind of, perhaps being stimulated. That information and data then needs to be anchored in the heart through the sign of Cancer, right? So that introspection, reflection, listening, and not just listening with the ears, but listening with the heart. Listening to what other people have said, messages that you've heard over and over again for your whole life. Look, you know what your problems are. You know that you can be, arrogant and manipulative at times, and, you know you have problems. You just don't want to face them a lot of the time, right? So, again, the willingness to say, that's true, actually. And then notice how Mercury creates that story, that false story, or that damaging story, that story in your head that keeps you doing that thing over and over again. This is why Mercury is so important to spiritual growth in the largest sense. It's about unwinding that story. Mercury is that story we're telling ourselves about what things mean. It gives things meaning, right? So that it allows us to see things in a way where we're not worried that we're going to learn something that's going to undermine our beliefs. Oh my God. If I accept that as true, then what? I've spent all this time defending this thing, so I can't let this piece of information come in, because then everything I've believed is wrong and I got to apologize, or I don't know, whatever it might be. This is why people push out their, things that seem anathema to their religion. People will push them out. I don't want to hear it. Got my blinders on, and we select the selective listening that we have to keep us in our, in our tribe and in our silo. So we're about to have a lot of shifts around this with the nodes about to change and Rahu about to go into Gemini. So people who are doing that, we're about to get a lot of that blown open. So the other thing that's really powerful with Mercury energy is mantra, the power of mantra. Because it's connected to speech. And mantra cleanses the mind, cleanses the buddhi, the intellect, and it aligns those thought waves and those thought patterns around a powerful sound, because everything emanates from sound. Space descends into sound. Space is permeated by sound, which then descends into thought. Excuse me. It's like saying, what? Right? So space, which is akash, descends and becomes thought, which is air, and then that becomes action, which is fire, and then that becomes feeling, which is water, and then that becomes form, which is earth. And so when you operate on the level of sound, and you say mantras, we just had Mahashivaratri, as I record this March 6th, 2019, and I was with my friend Mas Vidal, and we were listening there at Shivaratri, and they were saying the mantra to Shiva, Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tano Rudra Prachodayat. Ooh, that's just, you just feel that. Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tano Rudra Prachodayat. Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tano Rudra Prachodayat. You can hear the power of Shiva. Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tano Rudra Prachodayat. It's got that chanda, that rhythm. Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya dhimahi tanno rudra prachodayat. Just saying that, see what the mantra is the power of the deity in the sound. So mantra is the I should say the form of the deity, like the form of Shiva is to anthropomorphize or put a form to the power of the mantra. The mantra has the power. The mantra is the power. Because when I say it's the power, it means it's the power to shift your thoughts and your consciousness and align all those elements. Because mantra resonates through space. As I just said, space orients air, which is thoughts. Air orients fire, which is actions. Fire orients water, which is feeling. And water calms the body and the form. People who say they don't know how to meditate, everybody knows how to meditate if you learn. If you learn how to do it, it just takes a little bit of a trick. And one of the first things is mantra and breath. You don't just say the mantra, you inhale, and then you say it. Tat Purushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tanno Rudra Prachodayat. You can, and it's a pranayama, prana, which is the vital force, yama, which is restraint or control, controlling the prana. This is yoga. So the real yogic practice and the real spiritual practice with Mercury is mantra. So you have mantra like that. You can also Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. That's a shorter mantra. Then you have the Gayatris, like I just said. Then you have longer mantras like the 100 names. Then you have even longer ones like the 1,000 names. So saying mantra is the great spiritual practice for Mercury. And when Mercury goes retrograde, again, that's the great thing to do, is to say mantra. And an extension of mantra is kirtan. You can sing the mantra. It's fun, right? You can sing the mantra. Shiva, 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 Shambho, Hara, 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 Shambho, Mahadeva, Shambho, Mahadeva, Shambho, Mahadeva, Shambho, Mahadeva, Shambho. That's some real juice there, right? That's the sweetest stuff. Right? Because, you connect that sound, Shiva, 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 Shambho, Hara, 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 Shambho. You connect that form, and then you see that form in your mind of Shiva with the crescent moon on the head, and you see that in your mind as you're singing that mantra, and you become Shiva. You bring the energy to you. So the power of the mantra awakens the energy in you. And this is the way Sanskrit, all those Sanskrit sounds operate. The sounds aren't just sounds, they're like keys that unlock different energy centers and different parts of your energetic body. Again, people say, I don't believe all that stuff. So what? Nobody asked you to believe it. You do it, and you see what happens. Like everything else, right? So again, the mind will say, I don't know about that, I don't believe that. This is the Mercury, this is the story, this is the whole story that I'm talking about. All these ideas, all this story, this is how Mercury can just stay on the surface and not take you where you need to go. Mercury's energy allows you to understand the nature of the world. Because we want to understand. This is why Mercury is so powerful. This is why astrology really satisfies that Mercury need in us. Because as much as we can do the practices and whatnot, there's part of us that wants to know. But how does it work? How does it work? Okay, I believe that there's the universe, but how does it work? I want to know that too. And that's Mercury. That's why astrology is one of the best things you can do for your Mercury. And yes, one of the things to do Mercury retrograde as well is to really reflect on your studies, really bring them into your mind, right? So these are some great Mercury remedies and practices. When Mercury's retrograde, or when he's not retrograde, you know, we're dealing with these planets all the time, whether they're direct or retrograde or whatever. So anyway, I hope this was helpful for you to hear.